Now, I don't know if you noticed in the course of the last 2 or 3 contributions that expanding in America, looking for investment in America, these began to come through. Now, I'm sure that was all subliminal and not entirely connected to our next and final panel of the afternoon, where we're delighted to welcome investors who are across in Scotland from the United States and other parts of the globe. They are brought here thanks to the work of SDI. We will hear a panel which has Aman Verjee, the General Partner and Founder of Practical Venture Capital. Aman very kindly is chairing. Jane Gee from Clean Tech Ventures is going to be here as well. I don't want to pick on anybody in particular, but Florina Gabel, I hope I've got that. Gable? Goebel. See, I get called all sorts of names, so I apologize. I should have got yours right. But listen to Florina's background. She is at the intersection between health, space, and climate. I wouldn't say that's niche, but it's really impressive that you can get all those things together. We're looking forward to hearing your insights, as we are from Tibor Luka, I've probably got that all horribly wrong too, as an independent financial advisor, and all brought together, say, by SDI. To set the scene and explain a little bit about what SDI are doing, would you welcome first Graham Carruth to the stage. He's going to do a minute or two, and then he'll hand over to Aman. And if you would come to the stage in the meantime. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Just a couple of words from me by way of introduction. My name is Graham Carruth. I'm on the SDI Capital Investment team. We're still a relatively new team within SDI. Our main approach is trying to help scale up Scottish companies route into international capital. Our usual modus operandi is through the London market, where we've got presence and colleagues down there as well. But I just wanted to give you a bit of context as to how it's come about that we're sat here on the stage today. So we do a lot in the country, in the UK, but over the last couple of years, we've spent a bit of time supporting cohorts of Scottish companies into different markets. We've taken firms or been part of organisations taking firms to places like New York on several occasions, Silicon Valley. We were at Slush in Helsinki last year, and each time we've just been blown away really by the response we've had from the firms that we've taken. And actually, just the learnings that the firms have taken, and actually the value as well, with real connections made with some of that capital. So we thought, wouldn't it be awesome if we could just turn this around and have all these people that we've seen in all these different countries come into Scotland and see what that's about. So this really started to take root at Tartan Week earlier this year, where we also took a group out. So we worked with a couple of global Scots who are in the room today, Ross Hamilton and Seth Shorter, and to come up with a programme of how we might think about doing this in country. I should just briefly mention Ross and Steph work for a firm called Sustainable Alpha. They do a whole load of data analytics and ecosystem matching and supporting firms within them on a global scale. They have been already, and I think I'll speak for them by saying they'll be happy to do so for Scottish companies already. So this has really given us context as to what our firms look like on a global stage, and that work's been invaluable for some of the firms that we've had involved. So we are, the short synopsis is really, we wanted to expose these good people to all that is good in Scotland from a scale-up perspective, institutions, the ecosystem, the culture, and to really sort of dip them into that. We are on day 2 of a fairly hectic schedule. These guys have arrived over the weekend. We were through Glasgow yesterday. We saw in excess of 20, 30 companies yesterday, I think. We saw a good number of the Scottish investment community, and what I would say, is thank you to all the partners who have been involved in this, because actually I've been out, begging, borrowing, asking people very nicely to help out, and that has come together really well. So that's a point I really wanted to make. So we are in Edinburgh today. Tomorrow, we're going across some of the main sectors. I won't steal any thunder because you're going to talk about this as part of the panel just now, but there's much more that lies beyond that. Edinburgh today, tomorrow, then we're up to the northeast on Thursday and Friday, and I think over the course of the week we'll probably see, you know, a whole bunch of institutions, you know, many good people within that, and you know, it's going to get close to around 100 companies that you know that will be involved in this in one way or another. We do very much hope that it's, as I said at the beginning of this is turning it around rather than us going out the way. We really want this to be a recurring theme of what we're trying to do. And we heard this morning from, actually we were at Wire Course this morning, Mark Logan was presenting about points around tipping point in the market, and you know, is there a sense of that at the moment, just with some of the trends we're seeing? And with that, does Scotland then become a regular stop-off point for people like yourselves on a regular basis? You know, we certainly hope so. But look, let's maybe hear a little bit more of that from the panel. So, look, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes just to give you the context. Also to thank Investor Scale for having us today as well, and incorporating that into our program, and most of all to you guys, you know, who've been, I was going to say very willing participants. It's probably more than that because I'm absolutely knackered and it's only day 2. But the energy has just been great. So, you know, I thank you, and also for doing the panel session this afternoon. So, with that, Aman, over to you. I'll leave it in your capable hands.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to be here. As I said, it's day 2 of a pretty hectic day so far. I think I can speak for everyone by saying we're enjoying the time. Let me just start off with some introductions so you know who you're talking to. Why don't we start? Do you want to go first out of chivalry? We'll start with the lady to my right. Sure. A little bit about where you live, what you invest in, you know, a bit of your background.
Sure. So I apologize in advance. I don't normally sound like the voice of death, but I have a bit of a frog in my throat. So I'm Florina Goebel. I'm the president of the Center for Contemporary Sciences. It's a 501c3 based out of Washington, D.C. We are working to advance human, animal, and planetary health. So yes, rather an expansive mission, but we are on a mission to show the deep interconnection between those 3 sectors and how we are living in a time where it is in our face. It is no longer a point in time in which we can continue to ignore that these 3 things are deeply intertwined. And so I have a very weird background, a very nonlinear career trajectory. So I am also the executive advisor for Methuselah Foundation, which is another 501c3 based out of Springfield, Virginia. And it is one of the first organizations to actually address the diseases of aging and healthy life extension. So full transparency, my husband, Dane Goebel, co-founded that with David Goebel, as well as Aubrey de Grey. Although Dane and David continue to be co-founders of Methuselah. So I am in a privileged capacity to be able to ally with NASA and similar agencies on international open innovation challenges. So we executed the vascular tissue challenge, where a winning team from Wake Forest in the US was able to keep a liver tissue fully vascularized and fully functional outside of a lab for a month. And so that helps pave the way for, one day, fully regenerated organs from a patient's own stem cells, for instance. And the Deep Space Food Challenge is currently in flight. We're in phase 3. That challenge is all about hyper-efficient food production systems for deep space and long-duration missions, but also for addressing food scarcity here on Earth. So what's wonderful about these open innovation challenges, I'll go through it probably later, is that it's very democratic, it is open, it is international, and I'm excited to talk more about how Scotland and the UK can collaborate and engage in these competitions as well, and how space agencies may potentially collaborate as well on these.
Okay, very good. We go next, Jane.
Hello. Hi, my name is Jane. I'm the managing partner of Vectors Capital, and we invest in early-stage climate technologies. I am based in Silicon Valley. So I have been in this space like literally forever. I'm the third generation in my family doing energy and the environment. So I have an engineering background and I went into public policy. So The reason being that is, net zero is such policy driven, and then now the privilege we see so many companies, large company want to pledge to net zero is because the global consensus policy driven. And the startup here we see today, many of them funded by government research, and they spin out and really serve the community, and they become those like big corporates wants to be like net zero, become their customers. You eventually acquire them. So that's how my background is like public policy, engineering, and I also work at actually university. I work at UC Berkeley before to accelerate early stage technology commercialization, and I work in corporate venture also on renewable energy space. So I've seen everything all together. All the roles in the energy and the environment you can think about, I kind of like have an insight into this. So we like to really help early stage companies to get through early stage commercialization journeys. So we're not only an investor. You take my money, you work very hard. So
Excellent.
And then we will also work with you to set up your commercialization journey and milestones you need to reach. So when you raise the next round of financing, I want to see very beautiful valuations.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Tibor?
Yes, hello, I'm Tibor. The reason why I'm here, it's because we had to give a significance to beyond, and I'm beyond the pond. I come from Switzerland, so you have to reverse to see me. I'm actually a wealth manager, so traditional wealth managers in Switzerland tend to invest in public markets. So that's what we do, and not only, of course, we also invest in early stage companies, which is on the other side of our investments, because traditional wealth management would say it's scary to be in small and mid caps, which are all already in public markets, which is beyond being an IPO in the private market. So I'm basically focusing on both ends of the investment scope. And I always think it's interesting to be on panels where the people are really interested in private equity, while very often I have to talk to people who are interested in public markets, which are completely different profiles. These people look for interest, which was 4 to 5% on their portfolio. So it's a very different risk assessment we do with when we are talking to let's say to companies who are in the early stage, or to investors who invest in Switzerland in traditional portfolios. But I want to keep myself short. Our difference is that we go in SDG solutions mainly when we invest in the public markets, and I'm always very thrilled to go into private markets to find more innovation, because that is a bit lacking when we are assessing public markets. And for some of our clients, of course, we act as business angels who then co-invest with us in some startups. Yes, so that's what we are.
Okay. Thank you. Very good. Now you
Sorry,
know. Yeah.
I don't know where you found that picture,
I
but
don't
it's
know.
almost
I didn't
15
find it.
years old, so I'm...
You were 13 years
I didn't
old
know
back
it was
then,
still on the internet. Sorry for that.
I don't know where we found. I think we found that on your dating profile, maybe your Tinder profile. You look
was high
very
school.
handsome in it, though. Yeah. I wasn't responsible for the picture, so we'll have to ask SDI. So now you know a little bit about us. Well, let me go next. My name is Aman Verji. I'm the general partner of Practical Venture Capital. I've been running a venture capital in Silicon Valley. So that's 2 of the 4 of us are in Silicon Valley running venture capital firms. I've been doing that since about 2017. The firm I was at before was 500 Startups, which is an accelerator. We've now made over 2,700 investments, seed and Series A stage, across the world. I want to say 65 different countries. I was the COO for 3 years there. Before that, I worked at PayPal in Silicon Valley. My very first job there was 2001. I was hired by Peter Thiel and Elon Musk were the CEOs and chairman of the board at the time. My very first job was like the junior guy on the IPO deal team. I just graduated from Harvard Law School and joined the firm at that very early role. 9 years later, I was running finance for PayPal. During that time, they went public and were sold by eBay, so I saw all these different scale and stages as taking, basically having every role in the finance team that there was from that junior post to that final post. I've been the chief financial officer for a couple of later stage companies. The largest one you might know is Sonos, the consumer electronics company, now listed on the NASDAQ. And so I've had mostly finance and now the venture role. I know it's the last panel of the day. I'm going to try to make this interactive for folks, so I'll try to keep the energy high. You know us. Let me just get to know you a little bit better. Just show of hands. How many people are investors? Show of hands. So like maybe half. How many are founders, operating businesses? A little bit more than half. For the founders, like how many people have raised? Was your last round like a Series B or better? Show of hands. A few of them. So a lot of like mid-stage, sounds like early stage founders. Looks like you're in the fundraising game. Okay, that's helpful. So just a question then for the panel. The first time in Scotland. Who's the first time in Scotland? My first time. Yeah, you're closer by, so you've been here before. I am curious about seeing. I think we have seen 20 or 30 pitches, right, of companies in the past 24 hours. Had some dinner with some of the folks yesterday and spent some time with them. Like, what are your hot takes on the companies you're seeing? Any surprises about what you're seeing from the pitches? Any themes? Any tips for like folks here just in thinking about how they're talking about the company, pitching the company? Go ahead, whoever wants to take it.
Yeah. Oh, hello.
Go ahead. You're among friends here. Go ahead.
Okay.
Let them have it.
I will say, like, I'm pleasantly surprised by the quality of the startups here, and also the valuation is a lot more reasonable than Silicon Valley.
Yes. No kidding, right?
So like many of the founders have said, oh, we want to get access to U.S. investors. You know, once you actually get to the milestones that U.S. investors want to invest, then we'll come over and bring you to the U.S. And all the U.S. investor will be like, wow, your valuation is more reasonable than U.S. So, you know, they'll be very happily to support you. But what we find is the Series A valuation seems to be similar to what we see in the U.S. Seed is cheaper. So that's what I saw. But they only showed us 20, 30 companies, and they told us we need to see 100. Maybe like the statistic will shift tomorrow or the day after.
Yeah, I think we'll see some more in the next couple of days. Other perspectives on what you guys have seen so far?
Well, I think there were very good presentations. Of course, in 3 minutes you cannot really assess, but I was really impressed by what I've seen so far, and it's very similar to what I see also in Switzerland and continental Europe. So I was not expecting such a nice environment here in Scotland. We don't hear so much about Scotland and Switzerland, or maybe, of course, you might not hear much about Switzerland in Scotland either. But we have similar countries. We are both very small countries which have to act against the English or the Germans or the French. I mean, we're small countries, so we have to, you know, stand up. And it was very nice what we've seen so far. Yes, thank you.
I've also been very impressed. So I advise investors, but I was, of course, very interested in space, climate, biotech, and from what I've seen, Scottish founders are working at the cutting edge of things, from advanced materials for space to green fuels for rockets to regenerative medicine and human biology-based models versus animal models. It's been quite impressive, and I have to say that the culture here is so lovely. There's an intellectual humility here that really makes it good for collaboration. I think ripe for innovation, and that's been very encouraging for me to see.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think what I've noticed, what I liked about the companies we saw were almost all in like the health, life sciences, biotech, sort of space. But it was a lot of, I guess that's just the flavor of the first couple of days, because we were in the bio quarter at the university before. And so I think that what we noticed very strongly was there's a lot of talk about the technology, a lot of high quality discussion about the technology and how it works. In the US, what I think is different sometimes, at least at the seed stage that we invest in, there's more discussion about revenue and monetization, how to run a business. Maybe it's because we're in an academic environment and I guess everyone we spoke to must have a PhD in something, right? I didn't dawn on me until just now. I guess they're all educated. Whereas in the US, there are a lot of dropouts that I talked to, people who didn't get that PhD, and are now waiting tables or something. But they're working on a business plan in Silicon Valley. But they are thoughtful about market size. And it also struck me from just as Tibor was talking, you've got a market here. I guess you've got the local market in Scotland's 5 million. The UK is what, 50 million or so. Obviously, for selling to the US or to Europe, we're able to scale. All these addressable markets go up by a lot. And one thing I think you'll see a lot in the Valley, not necessarily at the seed stage or Series A, but certainly when you get to these next rounds, you want to show that you can scale the business into a valuation of hundreds of millions or $1 billion or more. And to do that, you have to think about what market am I really going to serve that's that big, that supports that kind of a valuation. And I didn't sense it today, but I have noticed in other countries, there's a certain humility, which I guess is a good thing. But if you're we've traveled in Japan and Saudi Arabia recently, and there is humility, but the humility can take its form in a sort of self-sabotaging way. If someone's asked, like, how do you turn this into a unicorn? How do you turn this into a really big, do you want to be the next Elon Musk? Do you want to be the next Snowflake? Do you want to be the next, I don't know, pick your decacorn? Sometimes the answers come back with like, well, we can, I think we can do it, but we have these very reasonable steps and milestones. We'll serve this market, and it'll be a nice, profitable outcome. But as a VC, the math doesn't always work for nice, profitable outcomes. They really want these 10x and 100x outliers, right? So to have a little bit of confidence and to be able to talk about the business and say, how do I get this to be that $1 billion plus outcome? Maybe we get there, maybe we won't. I mean, in America, there's no fault in failure. We swing and miss all the time. And it's okay, because we know that the next time you get up to the plate, hopefully you learn from your mistakes and you swing and miss again. It feels like just that being clear about that business and that path is really important. I saw some of that, but it wasn't as obvious this week as it might have been in a U.S. accelerator. Let's just stay on the trends. You want to say anything?
Well, I just have to qualify my comment on intellectual humility, which I think is kind of a different class of humility. Intellectual humility breeds curiosity. And I think
you liked it. You thought it was
I like intellectual humility.
Yeah.
I think it's critical. But I think that combination of audacity and intellectual humility is a really good recipe for success for founders.
One thing I want to mention is especially the vertical of climate tech. I see in Scotland, I also see government supporting startup, like through the Scottish Development Bank. They have been investing funds locally to then support the startups. In US, like we have a lot more government grants, research grants, helping startups to get to seed stage investor ready. I think that's a little bit different, like how government chip in to help the company at the early stage. But I'm glad to see here we take a different form of supporting those companies. I think that's really, really important to really help those companies to feel a little bit more investor ready, especially if you have a technology innovation. We cannot invest in a science project. We want to invest in a actual company. And I see like even the Scottish Development Bank, those like new founders setting up are all recent, in the recent like 1 to 2 years. So that means it also didn't exist before. So all the government are learning, even a lot of US grants, government grants, they provide those money based on the technology milestones those startups have. And that also didn't start like 10 years ago. That started maybe like 3-4 years ago. So everyone is realizing we need public-private partnership to advance the startup innovation locally in the country. But actually, we also see a lot of international collaboration that can happen beyond that. So even the, I think, Scottish government inviting all of us over is a gesture saying there's awesome startups here that need to be seen outside of Scotland. So they would bring us over, we see you, and we bring you to the bigger market in the States and elsewhere. And similarly, I think for a lot of the startup in the United States, for example, the one I invest, the Scottish government said we have a net zero goal 2045, and we need innovations to be in Scotland, help us to get to net zero. There might be like startup in the US say, I can do something specifically for Scotland, because Scotland is looking for offshore wind, which is not too prevalent in the United States. That one is US is catching up on this, but different countries have different agenda. So for startups, not only like which market you want to serve, and what is your first market? And because your first market can really set a stone for you to go to the next one that suits what you want to achieve.
The point about international collaboration is a good one. So in the U.S., there's been a whole proliferation of accelerators and just startup communities in certain regions where there's been successful outcomes. So mentors and helpers and advisors, especially in the Bay Area and in a few other regions, there's plenty of them. But Rena, you've had some experience helping companies connect to other accelerators or competitions and pitch projects where they can win, but even if they don't win, they get the access to some of those networks. Just give a quick overview of like how companies should be thinking about it, or how you could perhaps help companies connect.
Yeah, so if I can plug that, it would be a hyper-efficient way to get exposure, to get publicity. If you were to compete, say, I don't know, in an open innovation challenge with NASA and Methuselah Foundation and Center for Contemporary Sciences, as well as other huge partners that we're working to confirm right now. So these challenges are moonshot challenges, right? There's the Deep Space Food Challenge, hyper-efficient food production systems for long-duration missions, also for terrestrial applications. The new challenge I'm working right now is around producing a human bioavatar, so a connected chip system. Or actually, it's kind of method agnostic, but essentially human biology-based models, so that we can start gradually moving away from the animal model, which may have very low, if any, translatability for specific diseases that you might be studying. And so that is essentially going to be an international beauty contest of the cutting-edge technologies in microphysiological systems, organ-on-a-chip technologies, et cetera, that will help deep space explorers, as well as drug developers and scientists here on Earth, right? So just to paint a picture, I think some of this was mentioned in the last couple of days to our group, but there's about a 90 to 95% failure rate for drug candidates in the US.
Yeah.
What? And then it's 2 to 5 billion USD is the average it takes to develop a single oncology drug, for instance, and then 12 to 15 years before it hits the market. So the stakes are high, especially for drug and therapeutics development, and we're working to change that paradigm. If we start moving towards human biology-based models where efficacy and accuracy, go through the roof compared to those numbers. And so yes, we're working with NASA on this, and for instance, for biotech startups who are working on similar technologies, this is such an easy way to engage in this competition, which, by the way, as an allied organization, we have the liberty to put up millions of dollars towards an international prize pot. I have the ability to bring in celebrities and real global attention to this that NASA has.
Like Taylor Swift? Taylor Swift?
Don't.
No Taylor Swift?
Don't. I know.
Had to try.
I know her agent, but I don't know. But yeah, so we as an allied organization are not constrained, as NASA is, to do these wild and wonderful things to bring acclaim to these competing teams. But that is such a simple way. Even if these competing teams lose, they get that publicity, they get that clout. Some of them, like from the Deep Space Food Challenge, just raised like a Series B 50 mil, you know, because of the publicity and the exposure. They literally created protein out of air. I mean, that's kind of crazy. But that's the kind of stuff that I just love helping drive transformation in. And so I'm here to really encourage the collaboration from Scotland, the UK. This should not be just a US only, you know, US focused thing, because there's a lot of innovation outside of the US that needs to be appreciated.
Okay. Excellent. Let me shift a little bit to a different topic. I'm very curious about like your takes on the macro environment and where we think they are. Let me just do a quick audience survey. So let's pick the FTSE exchange, the value of the FTSE exchange. A year from now, is it higher than it is now? Show of hands, who thinks? Okay, feels like almost half. What about lower? Lower a year from now than it is today? Okay, less than half, a few tentative hands. What about interest rates? Let's pick the euro. Does anyone, I'm sure Tibor knows this cold. What is the 10-year euro rate today? Can anyone tell me? Curious how educated and interested my audience is right now. Euro 10-year rate? Nobody knows? Nobody has a guess? Tibor, can you tell me?
No, it's okay.
Can you give us a guess?
No, it's not a pointer, you know, of correcting people. But it's very interesting to see.
It is interesting that, you know, I'm just interested.
No, it's very interesting. No, it's very interesting to see that.
Yes.
It's a very important point, those interest rates, where they stay, but where are they going to go? And this is the link between the public markets and the private markets.
Perfect,
And
tell us.
it's important because the last 2.5 years have been really difficult, let's say, in the growth sector, in the public markets. Companies who are doing fine, having even good turnovers, making profit, but having big debts, were really penalized by the markets. And, you know, that is difficult for them. It's even, of course, more difficult for startups who have running costs and don't really have, for some, the income coming with it. So when the big guys who are public have problems finding money from the banks, it's very, very difficult for the ones who are just a small group of 5 or 10 people having to pay their salaries because there's no income on it. So they depend on grants and they depend on having a good structure, which is the case here in Scotland. But we have seen that it has been really difficult for those poor startups to find money, because it's already difficult for even big companies which are quoted on the market. So,
Do you feel like it's getting better? Do you feel like it's getting worse?
Yes.
What's your take, if you had?
I think we are hitting the bottom, but I'm rather optimistic. But that is also what I say to my clients in Switzerland, because they have seen markets fall for the last 2.5 years, and we have had those interest rates coming up drastically in the US, which of course had its impact here in Europe as well. But at some stage, there's no interest for the central banks to try to go higher with interest rates, because their main objective is to reduce inflation. But this is already there, more or less. So I believe it's going to be easier from now on. But of course, nobody is going to predict what just happened in Israel, or, you know, we have a sentiment that we are going to do better. But then, of course, the geopolitical situation brings more obstacles to it. But I believe 2024 will be easier on the markets than it is now in 23. That's my, and that's probably how 60% of the wealth managers in Geneva think of it.
Okay.
Yes.
The audience, I think, also voted. It was around 60-40. When I said, will the market be higher than, you know, just generically higher versus now, it seemed like more hands went up than, you know, than people thinking it was going to go down. Let me just give one more take on. By the way, the euro is about 3.7% is where the 10-year euro is. 10 years about 5% in the U.S., which a lot of people, let's say my age or younger, our age, oh, thinks 5%. That's crazy high. I have never seen, interest rates at 5%, because they've only been alive for like 20 years, or at least conscious, and in the, if they're in your 40s, you've only been alive and paying attention to markets for about 20 years. So we've been living during a 20-year period of essentially close to 0% interest rates. 2% or lower is sort of normal, right, for the euro and for the 10-year euro. Well, go back 400 years before 2000. You know how often the long bond was at 2% or lower? It was like two out of those 400 years. Seriously. So we're coming out of maybe a very unusual low interest rate environment, going into maybe a more normal interest rate environment. The central banks really have to fight two things. They have to fight inflation, which is high and was out of control a year ago in both the US and Europe, now coming under control, but still above their targets. And the other one is unemployment. And in all these countries, we're at full employment, meaning everyone who wants a job has a job, basically. Every adult who wants a job has a job, give or take-ish. And so the central banks are still going to stay tight, I think. And so I think that the optimistic, hey, we're going to get slowly better is good advice, but it feels like if you are counting on going back to the heyday of 2021, growth, nobody asking about profitability, nobody asking your runway or cash flow, those days are probably gone. And so I think the discipline that founders have to have around being able to make money, show how you're going to make money, runway, be able to get to profitability within a reasonable time frame, like that'll be really important for fundraising in the future. Public markets, for sure, but also even in the private markets. That's, I think in the Valley, even now, we see that more and more, the pressure. So as investors, like in the last couple of years, how have you thought about, fundamentals? What, is stuff more important to you, less important to you? Were you investing differently or advising companies differently a couple of years ago? Like, how would you advise founders to think about just knowing what public investors have to deal with? Expensive money, interest rates potentially climbing. I mean, you referenced it. You can get 6, 7, 8% as a public company investor, very risk averse in like private debt, or just putting my money into BBB bonds. Like that's looking pretty good right now. Why would I invest in this crazy
That's an
startup?
interesting point, absolutely, because
Yeah.
what happens is that, of course, you're racing against companies who are going to give you some interest, and they're quoted, and they've got dividends.
Yeah.
And so people who are there and say, okay, I'm going to invest in something, what's in for me? And right now, for the bond investors, they are happy because the bond goes back up to 3-4%. But that's an interesting case. With Blue Cap, for example, for our investors, we come up with a private debt deal. So we can give 8% in euros to our clients over 3 years. And that is typically what the clients today are looking for. They want something which has a recurring interest and not too much exposure to risk. So this is because we came out of 2.5 and even 3 years of markets going down with the COVID and so. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be so in the future. And I believe now we have hit the bottom, because when they come with those kind of requirements, it's time to invest in equity and private equity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so who else, anyone else want to jump in about, like, how do you see the fundamentals, where we are in the venture cycle? Do you agree it's getting a little bit better? Do you think companies are embracing the profitability motive and able to manage capital? Is that something you're seeing, or is that still work to do?
I think, we definitely have seen valuation came down in the United States, especially Series A. Like 2021, we see a lot of 100 million valuation Series A. And you even have to fight to get some into those 100 million. I'm so glad I dodged all the bullets.
Yeah.
So now it's like coming down to 30, 40 post-money evaluation. Like that feels a lot more reasonable. But some of the seed stage, Silicon Valley, they're still like, we're at the 30 million valuation, like, Series A is 30 million. So go down, be a little bit mindful of the market environment. So for the specific sector we're looking at, especially for the net zero movement, even though we have a cycle in the economy, but net zero things like we need to go all the way up. Otherwise, our human beings kind of like getting fucked up. So, so what we are really helping the companies to do is to show you how a strong product that customers want to buy. Customers are paying you money for it, that they even want to invest in the company. So in the climate space, actually, a lot of the investors coming in, especially after Series A, corporate venture capitals. So if you have a core technology that no corporate venture capital care about, I will be worried because you are not having a clear pathway to exit. So if your entire round are financial investors, there's some problem with it. So if you actually demonstrate that is something you want, you start to engage with corporates at the C stage. They get to know what you're working on. They maybe do joint development with you. They become partner with you. They become customers with you for all their net zero strategy, and you will be in a much more better hands, especially in later rounds. More and more corporate venture coming in. Eventually, we see many companies get acquired eventually by those big corporates at whatever price that depending on how they're willing to pay. Some companies went directly to IPO, but we also saw during the SPAC wave, some companies they were not ready to go IPO because they couldn't find the private money. So the printing money age is over, and they went IPO, and oops, the financial didn't show, and boom, they went to the bottom. However, as a public investor, you should pay attention to some of the public companies just went to the bottom. Just because they didn't have revenue doesn't mean that they didn't have something that will actually grow up eventually. But you need to understand the technology and what they're working on.
Thank you.
Very good. And then Rita, you advise investors. How do you feel sentiment now versus, let's say, a year ago? Does it feel like it's getting better? Are people still gun shy? Are they nervous about the macro outlook or the uncertainty?
Oh, gosh.
Scale of 1 to 10, how are people feeling that you're talking to?
Oh, man. So I'm a little siloed in Washington, D.C. right now.
Okay.
And I took on a new role as president, and my partner and CEO is on sabbatical, so now I'm basically CEO. And so I've been mired in that right now, so I can't give you a very good, really informative response to that.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. So pass.
Okay. Nope, you can pass. I'm curious if there are any questions from the audience. Anyone have anything to ask from investors, just with given the background? Yes, gentleman right there.
Thanks. It's Alan Donald from Angel Capital Scotland. Thank you very much for your insights. That's been really interesting. What I'd be curious to know is, so you've been hearing pitches from Scottish companies, and you've already alluded to one of the differences in the not such naked ambition and growth. What other differences would you point out between the pitches you've heard in Scotland compared to what you would expect at home?
I think the biggest difference is, so it depends a bit on the stage we've seen, and the categories we've seen have been early in life sciences. I think in the U.S., I'm a little bit biased because I was at the accelerator of 500 startups, and we actually taught. I think what I saw in terms of the raw materials at 500 wasn't that far different, but we actually taught a whole process on how to pitch. And their slides are on the internet, and they're on SlideShare. And it really came down to start with the customer and the problem, really zero in on what the customer says, what the customer's problem is, and then what your solution is after. And I saw a lot of solution first. There was description of the problem, but the problem was more about hey, what's the market size? And I think as an investor, I don't really need market size. I think all the professionals tell you, talk about SOM and SAM and TAM and total addressable market. I'll tell you a quick story about PayPal. The market size we talked about then was the internet and e-commerce. This is what Peter and Elon were, and it was massive, and of course it's the whole payments industry. But it quickly turned into, we can't eat this whole elephant. We don't know. We built a product that people wanted to use, and it was beaming money to people, and nobody used it. And it was well, it's going to be used for remittances and sending money to a person, and we're going to go to dinner, and we're going to split a bill, and nobody used it for that. And then nobody used it for the next thing. And finally, we realized people were using it to buy and sell on eBay. And I look back and I think, and that's what did it. It was people buying and selling stuff on eBay, a little bit of gaming, a little bit of adult, a little bit of naughty business that the credit card companies didn't want to do. And I'm thinking, God, if Peter and Elon had pitched the company back in 2000 or 1998, as a payment processor for naughty stuff that, that may be legal or not, and buying and selling stuff on eBay, which is like 1/10 of this small e-commerce, market share, I think it would not have been received well because of the market's not big enough, Now, of course, we conquered that market, went on to the next one, and now, like, 90% of PayPal is off of eBay and is doing all kinds of stuff. But we didn't build the company that way. So I think starting with a very small, identifiable problem, hey, let me solve this problem. This person is in pain. I have a 10x better solution than the next thing out in the market. Now let me go from that to the next thing, and if this works here, then it'll become a big, global company. Like, all that is great, but you really want to know the person can execute one little thing that's going to really solve a pain point that's very specific. And frankly, the smaller, the better. Most VCs will tell you I think even today will tell you big market, big market, big market. I may be a contrarian, but I would say focus on really what the customer is, what the problem is, how you're going to solve that problem. Make sure you're 10x better than the next thing, and then think about, secondary markets and ancillary growth paths. And usually by then you'll have changed your mind and pivoted your strategy anyway. And so we'll figure it out for the next fundraising. But for right now, you just want to know that the person's on top of the main problem. So I saw a little bit too much of technology's great. Here's what we're doing. Very little on here's what others are doing. Very little on besides the TAM. Who is the customer, and why is this such a dire, pain point?
They had just 3 minutes to do it,
Yes, they did. They did. Part of the challenge.
They did, but honestly, I agree with you. So I haven't been a founder yet, but I have been a product manager at Johnson & Johnson MedTech.
Yeah.
And what we did was defining the problem takes so much time. We made sure that we were super targeted about what the problem is that we were trying to solve.
Interesting.
Solutions come later, and the best solutions come when you have crystal clarity on the problem you're solving. And so NASA made the same mistake. Honestly, I just came back from a workshop with NASA. We're developing the new challenge on waste management for Earth and the lunar surface, and they kept talking about the solution. My first question with the godfather of digital twin technology, John Vickers, was, is there a digital twin of the Earth and the Moon to monitor waste? He said, no, but I've been advocating that for years. And I said, so how are we expected to solutionize around a problem where we don't really have we don't really understand the scope of the problem then, if we don't have an accurate monitoring system for either surface?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, that's a good point. And I was like, who's leading this in NASA? He's like, no one.
No one.
I'm like, oh, okay. So the opportunity is ripe to partner with NASA on these kinds of problems and help them define the real problems, and then come up with the right solutions.
Yeah. Other questions from the audience? Yes, in the back.
Hi, thanks. I'm curious to know, I guess there's two ways you can go to market when you're raising funds. One is through advisors and one is direct. Do you guys have a preference? Is one more advantageous? Does it make a difference, or will you welcome anything?
Advisors, you mean like investment bankers?
Investment advisors who would run your round for you. So they would do the intros, maybe send out teasers, tee up meetings, help with negotiations, versus founders going direct.
Yeah, and what stage is your company?
So we're actually bootstrapped. We're at 24 million revenues profitable. We'll probably do a round at some point in the next maybe 12 months. So
yeah, I think I've done this both. I've done it both ways. As the CFO, I've raised money. We did it. I think it worked best when it was direct. There's a little bit of a taint when you're an investment banker and you see, if you're an investor and you see things coming from investment bankers, there's a little bit of a negative signal. Which I guess feels around, why is the company paying money to advisors to raise money for them? Is that a really good use of money? And obviously the bankers are getting paid to play, so they're also being motivated by pushing out deals. Actually, I've also worked with bankers. I mean, every company that goes public has to work with bankers, and I've done that. So I felt, I guess, like done right, you can work with bankers and they can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. I would say generally early stage is probably just go direct and work with investors and have them make the intros on your behalf because they've got skin in the game. Later stage, more money, I think that's probably where bankers make sense if they're well managed. But that's kind of a U.S. perspective, and I'm not sure that's exactly right here for Scotland either. Maybe there's value in the bankers I'm not really seeing. But I'm happy to talk about it a little bit afterwards if you'd like.
Thanks. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Also, what's your view on Scottish-based businesses or businesses outside the US going for US funding when they aren't operational in the US and they aren't maybe going after that market at that point in time?
So no real nexus to the US, but going after US investors?
Yeah, because there's such a concentration of funding in the US.
I will say because the nature of my investment, I look at the early stage technologies. Normally, you have no customers wherever, so doesn't matter. But you need to like present yourself as your product is actually solving a problem that people want, people really need. That's really the key. And so then you can pitch to investor from US, from Japan, from wherever, because you're solving a real problem. But one thing I notice from the pitches we see is the founders, most of them are reading from a piece of paper when they're pitching. And you don't see that in the US. The US founders are standing there super confident, selling you a dream, right? And you don't really, if you have to look down on what you say, that means you're not wired in your brain to really believe what you are fully want to sell, right? I think that can be something that you practice, you pitch 100 times, you just wire in your brain, and now you talk to everybody with confidence. And also, like to your questions about the bankers, to be honest, you find the right investor, that investor will become your banker. Like, if I invest in a startup, in the climate space, I know another 30 VCs in US doing climate, and another 100 corporates looking for solution like this. So you find me, I back you, then I introduce you to everybody that I think could be relevant, right? So that will be like a lot more powerful than you find a banker. And the most bankers, I will say, they don't really, if they don't specialize in this area, they also couldn't find the right kind of people to connect you with, and they, send your stuff to random people, random investors, and also that make your company look weird.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Right, my email box is always filled with, "Hi, I'm blah, I'm solving blah problems," and I'm like, "Who are you? Why do I need to talk to you?" When I have 1,000 deals sent my way by people I know, so it just feels. Doesn't feel right.
Little mercenary, yeah. That's a very good point. That's really well said.
So just to touch quickly on what you said about how U.S. Founders tend to be very confident. They practice their pitches, that much I know. In front of the mirror, you practice again and again and again until you get it right. Well, I was approached by a couple of women founders who asked me my advice since they felt like they weren't very confident in their pitch. And I said, really, I'm an introvert, so I understand. The focus needs to be on your solution. You have to build confidence that you have something valuable, you have a solution to a specific and meaningful problem. And that should be where you're focused, not on yourself, first off. And then my second piece of advice is to study the art and science of storytelling, because that is the technology of influence. And whether you're a scientist, a founder, what have you, that is a critical skill that I think is not enough lauded, that is not enough emphasized. But that skill alone makes the difference between the Elon Musks in the world and everyone else in his sector. He's an excellent storyteller, and if you do not have that skill, then you're pretty much, that's a rate limiter for your success.
Well, you can always partner with an American who's going to
Work on
do the right
Find the
storytelling.
brash American storyteller. Put them on your management team. That's actually really, there's actually, this is the self-awareness, I guess, to know who you're talking to and where you're coming from is also helpful. And I think it's right generally, not in every case, but it's generally women founders, women presenters. I've been in Saudi Arabia, I've been in Kuwait, and I've listened to women founders in Kuwait pitching me in their burqa, which they have to wear, covering their face and body. But God, they sounded great. They sounded confident, and they were taking no prisoners. But of course, in general, I think we'll find certain minorities, women, cultural contexts. I don't sense it's a problem in Scotland. You seem to talk just fine from what I can tell. But there are certainly places where you go where this, this cultural bias fits in. Okay, I think we have time for one more question if we have one. I'm liking that the audience is engaged here. Any other questions for the panel? You can direct it at whoever you'd like. Go ahead.
Good for you.
Lived in. Good.
But I was just interested about the kind of Swiss angle about when I worked there, a lot of the companies, they're really heavily sort of materials processing, fine engineering focused. What's the community like now there for investment into those sectors beyond Switzerland? You know, is there an appetite for that? Because, you know, Switzerland had real expertise in that area, or still has, obviously.
Well, I would say Switzerland, just like Scotland, has very good engineers, and we have, if we want to expand, we have to go and do collaborations with others. Otherwise, we stay on a small market which has 4 different languages, so it's a bit complicated. And
5 Romansh.
Sorry?
5 Romansh as well.
Yeah. No, 4 with Romansh. I don't count English. So that's it's French, German, Italian, and Romansh. English is not a language to us. So, yes, Switzerland has a very similar position than you have, guys, in Scotland. And I think what will make a difference is to find good products and to be very selective in the industries you want to promote. Space is one, and for sure you beat us on that because we can't do much. And in the bio sector, I think both countries have very good universities, and we tend to work together. I heard from Dr. Khan here. She was in a PFL in this year, and I'm really happy to hear that because that means that there is exchange and collaboration. And as I'm very pro-Europe, but let's say as Europeans, we can't just bear having all the investments made in the US and you know, having our best scientists go there and to get more money because we are not good enough to come up with a good system to feed the startups from seed to IPO. And very often we have companies who leave us in after B. You know, when it comes to hundreds of millions to invest in the company, then boom, they are in the States because, you know, you have 350 million with the same language, and it's not an importance if you sell to Alabama or California. It's just another state which is just the same. It's not the same in Geneva or Zurich. We don't speak the same language. So yeah, you've got this advantage of the huge market, and I wish we could find ways of collaborating better.
One more, yep.
Yeah, Guy Martin here from Eden Scott. I think we know that we've got an excellent university and general sort of secondary tertiary education system. I think you found out today there's some interesting people here, there's some great talent, great history of innovation. We've got a sort of nascent, very supportive financial sector now in angels and VCs. Why aren't you guys over here and are making a bit more commitment and coming over, whether it's quarterly or putting boots in the ground? You mentioned the valuations and the opportunity to really score big in that front. So just intrigued as what would make you come over here?
You know, I think, I'll go first, but I'd love to hear others too. I think at 500 Startups, we invested our first Fund 1 was 2010. It was 80% US. Fund 2 was like 72% US. The biggest company out of our portfolio was Canva, which is in Australia. I know that's not Scotland, but you all speak English, so it's you know, it's whatever, America South, or it's beyond the pond, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, we had a big hit in Canva, and then I think we were thinking like you, like why aren't we doing this more often? Why are we the only ones investing abroad? Because in Sand Hill Road, you can invest in great companies and not move 50 miles from your house. So I think we got a bit lazy, to be honest. Which was fine up until a while ago, but now I think Fund 3 and Fund 4 were under 50% US. And Canva, by the way, to the young lady's questions in the back, they raised most of the money from the US. They were Australian, but they raised from Sequoia and Dragoneer and T. Rowe Price, all of which are in America, and as far as I can tell, Americans don't care. We'll invest in anything as long as we understand the technology and the opportunity, right? We're capitalists. And so I think what we decided was we're going to be international, and so we're going to spend more time here, and we're spending time in Scotland. So I think as long as we find the deals, find the opportunities, and they have to be successful, and then I think once they're successful, there's a track record, and then and then people come back, and then the ecosystem moves from there. So I think it's just a matter of time, and you have to kind of keep doing what you have been doing. But honestly, Americans can be we have so much opportunity at home. We're probably a little bit lazy about it. So you just have to keep the work up and keep the marketing up.
So I'll be building within the next 2 or 3 years a really ambitious social impact venture fund that connects space, biotech, and space, biotech.
And then you want to do climate tech.
Yes, climate. Yes, that's it.
That's why it's in the building process.
Yes.
You can add another sector if you want.
No. Just those three. Oh my gosh, I'm going to throw her off the platform. Space, biotech, and climate tech. Because I deeply believe, I have seen scientists really spend time outside of their silos together and actually come up with novel solutions to our biggest problems. And so this will also function as an innovation engine. I anticipate many startups will spin out of this consortium, but I am looking to make Scotland another base because I love it here. Ever since I saw Waking Ned Devine when I was 8 years old, I was like, I have to go to there. And now I'm here and I'm loving it. I'm loving what I'm seeing in Edinburgh and Glasgow. And so, yes, I am already in conversations with Eurospace tech folks and leaders. I have relationships with ESA and the UK Space Agency, and I'm hoping to deepen those relationships further.
I will say, yesterday having dinner with the Scottish bank, they said, if you move over, we will invest in a fund that you launch. I'm like, okay, I will see the startups here, and if the startup convince me that I should move some of my attention over, and you want to give me more money to deploy here, okay, I will, right? Why not? It looks awesome. So like she said, she have fantasized about this place since 8, right? I have been fantasizing Scotland castles ever since. So I wasn't expecting the first time I'm in Scotland, in Edinburgh, is I'm in this Asian buildings and having a conference. This is not exactly the type of dream that come true, but it just came back for a different way.
Very good. Well, we are at time. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and we'll see you around the block. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that was a way to round up the day. I now understand why Graham's knackered. If you're selling tickets for the bus, I think there might be a few people taking you up on that. But what a way to bring lots of great ideas and perspectives. And thank you for the insights and the candor with which they were delivered. Look, quickly reflecting on the day, everybody rightly focuses on opportunities and challenges, and we got a little bit of a corrective there about where you should start when you're doing your pitches. But what we have seen throughout the day is a scale of ambition amongst the founders, the investors, and others who are here that is extraordinarily encouraging and unimaginable in terms of what the Scottish ecosystem was like only a few short years ago. When you look at the things we were talking about earlier in fintech, space, the things that have captured our imaginations over the course of the day, all of it augurs well for the next few years. And I think we've been pretty honest to ourselves along the way about the challenges that we'll face, what we need to do in terms of the talent, what needs to be done with investors, the changing relationships that come over time. But the idea that we have got, I love that idea, intellectual humility but lots of creativity. That is great for us to be reminded of and to take on. There were some great phrases in the course of the day. I've used one already. Another one for the panel there was beautiful valuations. There's a concept to conjure with. We're just about to adjourn to the most important bit of the day, the drinks. 5:05, we're allowed, aren't we? And there'll be lots further to reflect on, lots of connections to make. May I just, if I may, thank, and I hope it will now appear on the screen in front of me, all the different partners and to, oh no, speakers and guests, sorry, I should have looked at the things. The speakers and the guests. Quite important, we'll grant you that. It has been great to see everybody together. We know how phenomenally busy you all are, so to take time out of that and give it to this event is really, really impressive, and thank you for all of that. We'll not go back through the roll call, but you know who you are, and you're going to get more credit over dinner. Tomorrow, I return to the official day job running the Private Equity and Venture Capital Association, and we've got a series of events going on. Perhaps most importantly, we've got a session with Richard Lochhead, who is the Scottish Innovation Minister. Richard has, as you'll have seen, been approaching this portfolio with real vigour, but I can see why he's excited about it. The innovation, the drive that is here today as a small subsection of all that's going on in Scotland is very exciting to see, and we will be able to give him lots more confidence about what is going on. Here in the UK, if I might expand our horizons from just here in Scotland for a moment, we have the largest hub of private capital expertise. That's venture, angel, private equity, anywhere in the world outside the United States. And as we've just seen, there's a lot of appetite in the United States to know more about what we're doing and what we're doing well. So on that note, let us raise a glass shortly to our success and to the hard work that continues again tomorrow morning. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much.
Just before everybody goes for a drink, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Michael for hosting today. Brings real gravitas and real quality to the day. So I'll like to hand it. Yeah, just about the same thing. Michael, go for it.